Do you ever wonder about how things got to be the way they are? In the world of roofing, we take technology and things like roof moisture surveys for granted. But they haven't been here forever, and they were certainly considered voodoo signs to some people just a couple of decades ago. I was fortunate enough to have worked for the gentleman that invented the process initially, and I'd like to take you back and go through history and explain how we got to where we are today. A gentleman named Don Gammie invented the first roof moisture survey, and he's somebody you really should know. Who was Don? He was a student at Purdue University studying mechanical engineering when World War II broke out. He was drafted into the service, into the Army, and was not at D-Day, but was at Normandy about a week after the D-Day landings. Fought his way across Europe into Germany, and eventually made it back to the States after the war, and went back to Purdue. Finished his degree, got married, moved back to the Chicago area, and joined the family's pipe fitting business. They used to get frustrated, as do most mechanical contractors, looking for leaks in pipe, looking for buried pipe. They would have a drawing that would show where a pipe was. They would dig and not find the pipe there. They would dig somewhere else where there's not supposed to be a pipe, and they would hit a pipe. This was before the days of Julie, where you could have pipes mapped out underground. So at the time, Don used his mechanical engineering degree and put his mind into it. How could he solve this problem? Now, at the time, the Atomic Energy Commission, which predated what we now know as the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, was actively encouraging industry to use radioactive materials for piecemeal methods. Nuclear medicine, for instance, was developed at the encouragement of the government. Don started looking around what was a way that he could locate buried piping. What he ultimately determined was that he could attach a cobalt-60 radioactive source to a plumber's tape and insert it into pipe, and would be able to track that source as it went through the pipe with scintillation detectors at ground level. The method worked very well, and he was able to get a license from the Atomic Energy Commission to provide that service in the greater Chicago area. That was in 1954. Over the next 4 years, they also got frustrated because they would have leaks in pipe. There could be 1 to 4 miles of pipe around a building for the fire protection system. And if it springs a leak, where do you start to look? So he developed another methodology to find leaking pipe. And what he came up with there was to use sodium-24. If you remember high school chemistry class, sodium has an atomic weight of 23. But he took sodium hydroxide tablets, very similar to salt. He could take the sodium hydroxide tablets, bring them to Argonne National Labs in the Chicago area, and get them charged from an atomic weight of 23 to 24. The thing that was ideal about sodium-24 was the half-life. It was 15 hours. Once again, going back to high school chemistry class and physics class, is that the longer the half-life, the longer it takes before it's not radioactive anymore. In this case, he found an isotope that would be radioactive for 3.5 days. So he could use the sodium hydroxide, mix it with water, and use it in liquid form to find leaks in piping. And knowing that when he identified where the leak was, the maximum time from the start of the test to where you could dig would be 3.5 days. The principle was this, is that if you had a large diameter pipe, they would pressurize it, segregate it from all the other pipes in the system, and then inject the sodium hydroxide, sodium-24 mixture into the pipe. And it would slowly go underground through the pipe to the point of the leak and spill out. And using scintillation detectors above ground, he could track that pipe. And obviously where the spill was, it would go from a very focused amount of energy to a puddle. You could mark that area. If it kept going, that meant there were more leaks, and you could find additional leaks further downstream. Wait 3.5 days, dig some holes, fix the pipe. It was a great system. That's what ultimately led to the first roof moisture survey. He was doing a pipe leak test for the old post office in downtown Chicago For those of you that have been through Chicago, it has the Congress Expressway going through it. While he was doing the pipe leak test, across the street was a hotel. It's presently a Holiday Inn. And the owner of the hotel came out and wanted to know what they were doing at the post office, and Don told him he was looking for a leak in the pipe. The guy that owned the hotel said, "My roof leaks, can you find that?" Don said, "I'll give it a try." And so in 1968, he started experimenting on that roof to try to see if he could develop a system to find leaks. Originally, he tried it with liquid tracers. He found it was completely impractical. Started doing some more research and thought that nuclear gauges that were used to find the density of asphalt or moisture in soil may work. They did. And with proper mapping, you could find out where the leaks were in the roof and how the moisture was spreading through the roof. He started offering that service as a commercial service across the country in 1969. In 1970, the European version of our Atomic Energy Commission thought the work he was doing here was so interesting. They asked him to speak at their annual convention in Brussels, Belgium, which was in April of 1970. From there were several articles, including an article in Plant Engineering magazine in 1972. And from there, business started to take off. And his focus went from being a piping and mechanical contractor to what we now call roof consulting. Now, I can tell you this, Don was a fiercely independent man. And through most of the 70s, it was a struggle trying to convince people that he had a method to find leaks in roofs and where the subsurface moisture was. We take it for granted now. Nobody really wanted to believe it back then. Don ended up passing away in 1992, about the same time that RCI, now IIBEC, was formed. He didn't want to have anything to do with IIBEC. I attribute this to the fact that he was an inventor. He could come up with ideas, but he was not a visionary. He never foresaw that what we take for granted today as being commonplace, that everybody would be doing it, and there'd be opportunities for many more firms. You got to remember, back in the 70s, there was literally less than 5 companies that provided this kind of service. How many thousands are there today? Always being the inventor and the engineer, he started working on a consistent process by which to do the roof moisture surveys. And one of those things was he did several buildings where they did the entire roof on 1-foot grids, and then would plot that data: 1-foot centers, 2-foot centers, 3-foot centers, 4-foot centers, 5-foot centers, 6-foot, 7, 8, 9, 10. Most companies that provide roof moisture surveys today do them on 10-foot centers, some do them on 5. He determined the right number was 6 feet apart. Below 6 feet, it was more readings than you needed to get good clarity of what was happening on the roof. More than 6 feet, it was his opinion that you were losing resolution and the data was not as reliable. There's people that don't think that a point system roof moisture survey works because the argument is you miss spots in between. That doesn't really work. If you look at a newspaper, they got those pictures, they're all dots. So it's not a continual photograph, but a dot set close enough together to get good resolution. That was his argument for using 6-foot centers when it comes to performing a proper roof moisture survey. So that's the brief history of how we got from a piping contractor to roof moisture surveys that everybody is doing today. I had the good fortune of working for Don for 11 years and learned a lot from him. He's somebody you should know. If you ever want to know more, feel free to reach out and give me a call.